in this task are my panelists this morning. With me in studio already, we have Joseph Chege, politics and youth affairs analyst. We also have Nuruddin Hagai, advocate of the High Court. Nuruddin, I kept trying to tag you on Twitter. I could not. Is it a setting?
No. You should be able to.
We need to work that one out.
I will.
All right. We expect shortly Advice Mundalo National Youth Chair, Jubilee, and Solomon Kuria, political analyst. I hope they're not too far. Already some comments have come in. Michael Mitch says, oh yes, I beg your pardon, I didn't mention what the topic is. I did mention it at the very top, but just to remind you, young and restless millennials such as myself will recall there was a show called The Young and the Restless. For this generation, shall we say young, infamous, and Kenyan?
Must.
All right. Unemployment, underrepresentation, a recipe for chaos. And some views here. Michael Mitch says a recipe. It is idleness. Unemployment causes idleness, where people become goons of destructiveness, of progressive development. Underrepresentation is not a major problem because even if you put youth in the helm of power, they still forget to do their work and become greedy. Do you agree with Michael? I'm curious what my panelists also make of his comments, but we'll get to these comments. Let's take a look at another comment that I have here, and then I'll invite my panelists to quickly say whether they agree or not with Michael. Matthews Ondoro says, I support what we're witnessing today in Kenya is fueled by the politicians in the name of our people. Who are their people? The politicians, both in the government and the opposition, are finishing Kenya once and for all. I sometimes wonder why the church is now silent. So your thoughts on these comments? I'll start with you, Nuruddin. The comment by Michael that underrepresentation is only an issue because when youth assume power or get appointed or elected into offices, they forget their cohorts.
You see, the problem is, who are these youth that get into these offices? You see, the reality is that it depends with your intention when you're seeking office. Most of the time, our politics is pegged on bribery. Now, someone spends 500 shillings per head in a constituency if they're trying to be a member of parliament. So when they get into office, what do you expect them to do the first thing? They'll have to recoup their money. And that is, so we also enable them in a way, because the moment you accept that money, when they go into office, it's like you're sending a corrupt person into office and you're saying, when you get there, become clean. No. You had two candidates, for example. One didn't have money, one had. Now you see the sad reality is that when you call people to a hall and you talk to them, when you want to leave, they'll ask you, unatuacha aje? So unawacha na 500 is the one you elect. So when they get into office, when they're doing whatever they're doing and you complain, they feel they have the audacity because they bought your votes. That's the sad reality. Now, coming back to the youth, the sad reality is that the youth have never spoken in one voice in this country. And it's by design. Because whenever there's a conversation about the youth have to shape up, need to take up, it's their time, they get divided. How do they get divided? Let's say a coalition is formed, a coalition X, let's say. And then let's say there's me, there's Chege, there's somebody else. To bring about discord, they know where to touch. They say, so Chege is a youth leader. That in itself, there's this craze about being the leader of that faction. Everybody wants to be a youth leader. If you look at some of the posters you have most of the time, youth leader. And that is the problem. So everybody wants to be a youth leader and they forget that it's not about just leading. What is the cause? If you don't have a single cause, a genuine cause, then whatever you have, the political elites or those who have been there all those time, they'll just use that to divide you people. So you have two factions in one. And that in itself, whatever the agenda was, dies. Because now everybody is thinking, how do I get to a point where, because when you look at, for example, what we have done in Kenya, those who are corrupt, we've put them on a pedestal. So someone is looking at them, how do I get to own such a vehicle, live in Karen, live in ABCD, and that is the problem. So unless we change that, and start with the mindset, we'll always be here, ranting on Twitter, and then 2, 3, 4 youths are called up who are meant to just continue the status quo. And then they say, you know what, we're helping the youth. And those who get into those offices are really conversant with what the genuine mass really want.
Okay. Yeah. There's something you said, which is how do you elect a corrupt leader and then expect them to be clean once they get into office? When I look at some of the young people who've been elected, John Paul, Mwirigi. He campaigned, you don't remember the famous story with one sweater. He was identifiable with his sweater.
Yes.
You know, he would walk into homes. Alikuwa anatembea, ni gari alipata alipoingia, ni Uhuru alimnunulia, I think.
Yes.
Look at Lynette Toto, the odds that she secured the UDA party ticket for woman rep. These are not people who had money to dish out.
Now you see, the problem is some get into office like those two examples we've given, and then there's this problem that occurs, the big man syndrome. If you look at the Toto's campaign and the one who's there are two different people. If you listen to her right now, the bravado she has, two different people. It's some forget that we are here to serve. That Mheshimiwa tag takes them, gives them a craze. The bravado that comes up with it is what brings the problem, because they change. People say sometimes, you know, there's a saying that you really don't change. Money just highlights the attributes or habits that poverty had hidden. And that is a sad reality.
I can't agree with him, and with my panelists here, because it's a sad truth. That's what most of the youth behave when they get into those offices. And the reason they behave that way is because in most cases they work so hard to be there, because the youth have to jump so many hurdles for you even to see the light of the day, maybe in parliament, or even to be appointed anywhere in the government. That's a sad story. I also want to add that what is fueling all those, even the perception that most of those youth, they serve their interest, they don't serve the other youths, is because it's like a drop of water in an ocean. When one youth gets it, there's millions of youth who are looking up only to that one individual to represent them, because there's no other person. So any mistake that one youth does, it is highlighted by everybody. Even maybe it's a slip of the tongue, or he did something because of the youth. Being youthful, you are meant to make many mistakes. But now the problem is that all the youth in the country are just looking up to you, to what you are doing. So it's very possible that they will find fault here and there on that one youth. But having said that, underrepresentation is doesn't only mean that those people who are elected in office. Underrepresentation means also the people who are being appointed into various offices. And for you to be appointed in various offices, the political offices, maybe a director, a board, or CAS, those ones that were maybe had been done away by the courts, you have to be a sycophant. You have to be a sycophant of the sitting government. They don't look at the merit, that what are you bringing on the table? Are you going to represent the youth? You have to be a sycophant of the people who are in power. That's what happens. So for you to be a sycophant means that if you are told tomorrow to crush all the youths in this country with lies, with propagandas, with innuendos, you have to do that. That's why this thing will not go away, and it will go away the day that we will fix our morals in this country of when we are doing the campaigns, we tell our people the truth, no matter how hard it is. When you go to office, you live to what? You live to your promises, and that goes to the morals of the society. Yeah.
All right. You know, when you were speaking, you're reminding me of this story. Remember when former President Uhuru Kenyatta appointed Mudi Awori, and Uhuru, why I ignored youth and appointed 91-year-old. Uhuru defends appointment of 91-year-old Mudi Awori, and he said, you know, you guys, like Nudin pointed out just a few moments ago, when I get you into these offices, or rather when you're appointed into these offices, you want to make money fast. Quick money. All right, so I'll leave this conversation there for now, and transition us into the dailies. Daily Nation front page, and their headline today is "Call to Cease Fire, Mounting Toll." Pressure is piling on President William Ruto and Azimio Chief Raila Odinga to resume talks aimed at ending anti-government protests that have left behind a trail of deaths and injuries, disrupted livelihoods, and led to business losses, looting, and destruction of property. But amid the truce calls, the rival camps are digging in, with the president vowing to go after Mr. Odinga and his handshake partners. And that would be former president, his predecessor, Uhuru Kenyatta. And the opposition chief has promised a continuation of the civil disobedience next Wednesday. When will the voice of reason prevail? And we have a couple of quotes on the front page here. Let me just zoom in a little bit closer so that we can read them better. And I see an image here of President William Ruto stating, "I will not allow the handshake brothers to plunge the country into anarchy. I will deal with them firmly." Azimio Chief Raila Odinga, "Ruto must stop making threats. If he wants to assassinate us, let him do so, but he will also die one day." Archbishop Timothy Ndambuki says, "We fear that the growing sense of hopelessness will push the country towards instability and possible violence." And actually, that is, gentlemen, what we're discussing this morning. We have Sheikh Abubakar Bini, who says we should not wait for someone from outside to come and sit with us. We have religious leaders who can spearhead this process. And lastly, highlighted on the front page of the Daily Nation, Archbishop Martin Kivuva, who says, "We appeal to you to reconsider the proposed mass action program that is likely to worsen the situation for Kenyans." Who was it who was asking on Twitter this morning? It should be Matthews Ondoro, who was saying, "Why is the church silent?" They are speaking. We've seen Archbishop Martin Kivuva there. I will pull up a statement. Actually, let me just pull it up. And there was a statement released by the Kenya Conference of Catholic Bishops, as well as the NCCK. I posted it up on my Twitter at @OBurrows. And essentially, they had a couple of recommendations, and here is that statement. Let's start with the recommendations to the President. So, a message to His Excellency William Ruto. They say they ask for an immediate, as an immediate mitigation measure, Your Excellency, we recommend that the Finance Act 2023 is repealed so as to review the heavy taxation burden imposed on Kenyans. In addition, we urge a cessation of domestic borrowing by government so as to enable banks loan private businesses that drive the local economy. Now, as for Raila Odinga, this was their recommendation. And I will zoom in here. I hope this is the right page. Yes, they say, "We appeal to you to reconsider the proposed mass action program, which is likely to make the situation worse for Kenyans. We also urge that you do not give the people false hope that the government can be removed from office through collection of signatures." All right, let's get back to the Daily Nation. So, Matthews, I don't know whether you feel like that is enough said by the church. Do you feel they should be doing more? You can respond to that tweet. All right, also sharing the front page of the Daily Nation is this story: "Court stops removal." There we go. Not so fast. Sorry, I've cut off part of it. Not so fast. Court stops removal of Murathe Kioni from Jubilee. The High Court has suspended the removal of Jeremiah Kioni, David Murathe, and Kagwe Gishohi as officials of Jubilee, and their expulsion from the party. Justice Asanath Ogeri also suspended a Kenya Gazette notice issued by the Registrar of Political Parties yesterday, notifying the public of the intended changes in the party's leadership. I beg your pardon. The special notice announced the removal of Kioni, Murathe, and Gishohi as Secretary General, Vice Chairman, and Treasurer, respectively. We've been joined by Solomon Kuria. Karibu sana. You can grab a seat. We'll get you some coffee or tea. Actually, Nuruddin, you don't have any coffee or tea there, or water. Yeah. We'll sort you out. We'll sort you out in a moment. Karibu Solomon. The only thing we have discussed so far is a couple of comments on the question of unemployment and underrepresentation being a recipe for chaos. Okay, also on the front page of the Daily Nation, Kenyans have invaded forests after lifting of logging ban, and this is according to the Environment Cabinet Secretary Soipan Tuya, 10 days after President William Ruto announced the government's decision to lift the logging ban after 6 years. Environment and Climate Change CS Soipan Tuya has revealed that a number of Kenyan communities have encroached on forests, engaging in illegal activities such as charcoal burning, with some resorting to building structures and even leasing out a forest land. So I will leave the front page of the Daily Nation there. Let's take a look at what is contained in the other papers. Let's transition now to the Business Daily. This is the front page story. State fines buyer for 15 billion shilling stake in Portland Cement. This particular piece is penned by Edwin Mutai. The government has found a deep-pocketed buyer for a 30% stake in East African Portland Cement Company for 15 billion shillings in a deal that is likely to trigger a fresh fight for control of the cement firm facing insolvency. Also on the front page, desperate for loans, Kenya offers highest returns in 7 years. This one is by Kefa Mwiruri. The Kenyan government is increasingly borrowing more expensive loans from the domestic market in a trend that has set up households and businesses for a new season of costly loans. The interest rate on a one-year treasury bill, which sets the benchmark for determining interest rates charged on other borrowers, peaked at 12.452% in this week's auction, whose results were announced yesterday. On the ticker, EPRA faces legal test in fuel price review today. The energy regulator is facing a legal test ahead of today's pump price review following a court order that froze the doubling of value-added tax, and that is at 16%. Centum reposts 135 million shillings profit on valuation gain, and why Treasury is hesitant to sell long-term bonds. The Treasury has shied away from its policy of issuing long-dated bonds, seeking to avoid locking in higher debt service costs in a rising interest rate environment. I'm curious, do you expect, because today is when? Today is the 14th, so I expect EPRA to announce the new fuel prices tomorrow, right, gentlemen? I'm not delusional, am I? Do you expect them, Nurdin, to take the tax back, cut the cost back, the VAT to 8%?
You see, whether they do that or not, will people be refunded? That's the question. That was an illegality. Will they be refunded? And that is why a class act will soon find EPRA in court at the end of the day. Because Kenyans actually being told to actually ask for the ETR receipt when you buy fuel. So that when that class act comes to court, they will have questions to answer. Because whatever they are doing, they are conservatory orders against the Finance Act, which are in court, and they know what they are doing. So at the end of the day, the question, whether they rescind the prices that they put up, the question is, will people be refunded? And if no, why? And if why, where is the money? Yeah.
Okay. Joseph, I am avoiding to fuel until tomorrow. I'm like, if fuel itanipeleka hadi nione bei ile bei itakuwa kesho. Do you expect EPRA will abide by, adhere to the court orders, given it has not so far?
Mine, I will take a political angle on this, because the EPRA might deceive Kenyans by reducing the prices or abiding with the courts, just to try and make sure that when Azimio goes to the streets next week, they will have nothing to tell Kenyans that the prices have gone up. They will tell Kenyans that the prices have gone down. So mine, I think they will do something, maybe 2 shillings or 3 shillings, they'll take them down. But after the dust has settled, they'll still go back to the usual place. Yeah, because if they didn't quite take the court order immediately as they were issued, what makes you think that this time they are not doing it monkey businesses? That's what they are doing.
All right. Let us hear from none other than Solomon Kuria. Yeah. Do you expect the cost will go down? Although this was a statement they released on June the 30th, saying pursuant to the Finance Act 2023, VAT on super petrol, diesel and kerosene has been revised from 8% to 16% effective 1st July. Accordingly, EPRA has recalculated the maximum pump prices that will be enforced from the 1st to the 14th of July 2023, taking into account VAT at 16%.
Purely that is implementation of the 2023-2024 Finance Act. And when there's a court order, I still believe they should have gone around it and see whether they should have postponed the first day or the first time they are implementing the 16% VAT on fuel. I think it should come down by all means, because we are law-abiding citizens, and we have done that for long. I think also the judges are treating this matter on Finance Act with some urgency, because it can't take forever. We also don't want the courts to help a section of politicians also cripple the government, because you know the engine of government is the Finance Act. If the Finance Act is not implemented, then there's nothing the government can actually do to serve the people. So we don't want to see this stalemate taking too long, because going by what the court order is saying, it simply says the government shouldn't even collect taxes. Which legal basis will they be applying to even charge people licenses? Because all that are put in the Finance Act.
Are you not being disingenuous? Because if the Finance Act of 2023 is not in effect, then the status quo remains, and the status quo is the Finance Act of 2022-2023.
Yeah, I agree. But what is the fiscal year of a government?
You know, the fiscal year is not collecting taxes.
The fiscal year of a government. No, what I'm saying, anybody can go to court and challenge, because the fiscal year of a government starts on the 1st of July and ends on the 30th of June. That's what it is.
How about
yeah, I can go to court today and ask the government and ask NEMA, why are you charging me this license? On which Finance Act are you drawing these charges? These rates.
Okay.
Which one?
All right.
So we don't need this stalemate for too long, because it will also bring other arguments.
Complications.
Yes.
All right. Understood. You know, when you were talking, you reminded me of something Edwin Sifuna said yesterday. It was yesterday, right, on Citizen TV, when he said we are going to have maandamano from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, every week until that ostrich pulls its head out of the sand and listens to the people. They pontificate about being people who are believers in the rule of law. The fuel outside here is being sold at a higher price in contempt of the court. Okay, we'll leave this here. We take a break. We come back with more on AM Live. We'll take a look at Taifa Leo. Kionjo tu onyo kali. Rais atishia kumchukulia hatua kali kinara wa Azimio Raila Odinga kwa kuharibu mali. All right, welcome back. Let's continue the perusal of the dailies. We'll wrap it up in about 10 minutes. I know Roslino Bala is quite keen, gentlemen, for us to transition into the topic. And the topic we have this morning is Young and Restless of Gen Z, Young and Famous and Kenyan. Unemployment and underrepresentation. Are they a recipe for chaos? Speaking of chaos, we'll look at that front page of Standard and star some of the destruction that was wrought during Wednesday's protests. But first, let's take a look at Taifa Leo. And serikali imetoa onyo kali kwa viongozi wa upinzani na wafuasi wao kwamba watakamatwa na kushtakiwa kusababisha maafa na uharibifu wa mali katika msururu wa maandamano. And on the front page, here we have Rigathi Gachagua, the deputy president, being quoted as saying, serikali imefikia kikomo na sasa itachukua hatua kali kabisa dhidi ya magenge hayo ya wahalifu. Hatutaruhusu hao watu wa Azimio kuwaua wa Kenya kila mara, kuharibu mali ya umma na kuvuruga biashara za watu wetu. Kithure Kindiki is quoted as saying, na wataka polisi wetu kuwa imara, msicheze na wahalifu, mpambane vikali na wahalifu hawa bila huruma. Kwa upande wetu tutapambana na mtu yeyote atakayezuia maafisa wetu kufanya kazi yao. Moses Kuria quoted as saying, and they responded to him and told him to get his facts right, but this is what he had tweeted: chanzo cha ghasia na uharibifu wa mali katika eneo la Mlolongo jana and that is Jumatano, ni mpango wa serikali wa kuwafurusha maskwota kutoka ardhi ya East African Portland. Mwaweza kuteketeza kila kitu lakini tutawaondoa. And the Transport Cabinet Secretary Kipchumba Murkomen is quoted as saying, ghasia za Azimio ni uhaini kwa sababu zinalenga kuvuruga uchumi. Kama serikali hatuwezi kukaa kitako huku tukitazama mtu akiharibu kile ambacho taifa hili limejenga kwa miaka mingi ili kufanikisha matakwa yake ya kibinafsi. So that is quote of the Transport Cabinet Secretary. Regardless, Raila says tukutane tena Jumatano ijayo. Raila akaa ngumu. Let's see. At the very top here, Tifa, raia wasema nchi elekea pabaya, utafiti waonyesha wengi wahisi Ruto hajatimiza ahadi zake kwao. So more on that on page 4 of the Taifa Leo. Let's take a look at the Standard now. And as I said, they have depicted on their front page the damage that was done to the expressway. Death and destruction, deadly aftermath. President yesterday accused Azimio leader of leading a criminal gang, blaming him for the damage to property. But the opposition retorted, saying it is government agents who went on a killing spree. We have an image, one on Raila on one side, William Ruto on the other end. They're quoted as saying, we'll start with Raila, we will go back to the trenches whether they like it or not. The brutality is not ad hoc, it is coordinated and ethnicized. A special squad has been formed within the police service to brutalize and execute civilians. Reminds me of the picture that was shared, do you remember, by Pauline Joroge on Twitter, and it was even trending, and there was a gentleman in civilian carrying a gun. President William Ruto here, we will push our development agenda forward. We will not allow handshake brothers to hold the economy at ransom and to take our country hostage through violence by causing anarchy. Day after riots, tear gas children recuperate in hospitals as activists condemn the act. Church tells presidents to listen to the cries of Kenyans. If not, instability will follow. Families come to terms with death of children, mothers and fathers in protests. You saw the lady in Bidhe who lost a child. I think it was is it in Mali?
Mali.
And she was saying the days she went hungry to take her child to school. I mean, stories like that. Terrible. Okay, so this image here is a section of the vandalized infrastructure at Mlolongo along the expressway. Okay, the Star, and their headline is this: arrests loom as Raila. Did I say headlines is this? No, I said headline, right? Yeah. Headline is this: arrests loom as Raila Ruto head to Nyanza. 132 people, including ODM deputy leader Oparanya and Mavoko member of parliament Macau, arrested. Again, they also have an image of the destruction done. It is a mess. Roads, Transport and Public Works Cabinet Secretary Chumba Murkomen inspects the damaged section of expressway at Mlolongo yesterday. ODM summons rebel MPs as Raila cracks whip on renegades. ODM has summoned at least 7 rebel party MPs to appear before its disciplinary committee as the opposition outfit initiates the process of kicking out renegade members. Not an easy process. They tried this before with Aisha Jumwa. It was Aisha Jumwa and I can't recall the name of the other MP. Late, I think. I'll Google. Okay, disciplinary committee chairman Professor Ben Sihanya has summoned the lawmakers, including Nairobi woman Rep Esther Passaris, to appear before it next Wednesday. And another story that caught my eye is this one, pages 4 to 5 of the Star. Horror of men raped by men. Survivors recount their ordeals when JMK went out last Friday to wind down at a suburban restaurant in Nairobi. All he expected was to have a good time and then go back home. He had a good time, but not long. At one point in the night, he got up to go to the washroom. Unknown to him, 4 men had followed him to the poorly lit facility. I'll leave that story there, but it's definitely one to look at, page 4 to 5. Is it a rising trend? I might host a conversation on this because really we don't talk about gender-based violence against men often. Actually, when you read the story, you'll find that JMK did not report this assault to the police. So we have to normalize discussions around the subject to destigmatize and remove the shame. So I believe I will look at this topic in depth later on. But for now, let's deal with the politics of the day. Why collecting signatures to remove President Ruto will not work. So that is the Siasa political pullout in the Star. People Daily, so we can take a look. I have about 3 minutes to go. People Daily, the headline reads, blame game over protests. Former Governor Paranya arrested after demos as government and opposition leaders trade accusations. Here we have an image of the party leaders on either side. The UDA chief, Cecily Mbarire, Kimani Ichung'wah and Cleophas Malala, when they condemned Wednesday's protests, they described the chaos as, quote, madness. An image of Wycliffe Oparanya at the center there. ODM leaders Babu Owino, Edwin Sifuna and Tim Wanyonyi, among others, when they criticized police over handling of protests. Showdown looms over Ruto Raila Nyanza visit. President said for PS's homecoming fate in Homa Bay, as Azimio leader will be in Kisumu tomorrow. I hope they address the events at Sondu, right, and call for sobriety, cessation of hostilities, and clear heads prevail. So that is it. The very top here, People Daily, boost for legislators. After Treasury pays out 47 billion shillings for CDF, every constituency with at least 8 wards will receive 162 million shillings, while those with 2 wards will get at most 139 million shillings, says the NG CDF chairman. Leadership wrangles rock KTDA as CEO quit notice raises questions. So I believe we have covered all the dailies. I'll transition us now to the topic of conversation because it touches on what is on the front page of the Taifa Leo, what is on the front page of the Star, what is on the front page of the Standard, what is on the front page of the Daily Nation. Calls for sobriety, images of the destruction wrought, smoke, fire, the expressway. Where the youth is concerned is unemployment and underrepresentation a recipe for chaos, because the church is warning that unless something is done, and I'll quote, again quote Archbishop Timothy Ndabuki here, who says, we fear that the growing sense of hopelessness will push the country towards instability and possible violence. And I read something as well here. Was it the Standard? Yes. The church tells president to listen to the cries of Kenyans. If not, instability will follow. And that reminds me of